Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is an Omega Seamaster Aqua Terra Quartz. I'll put the full reference number into the comments here, but this is an older model of the Aqua Terra. The newer Aqua Terra Quartz are much less impressive in many ways, and so I picked this little guy up on the used market, and I'm really grateful I did, because it's a very, very nice little watch. Let's do a quick size comparison. Unfortunately, I find myself without a lot of my higher-end watches just because a couple have been sold. The Omega Seamaster's in for service right now. But anyways, here is a Casio ProTrek PRW 3000T. And here is your Casio F91W. And this comparison, if nothing else, shows you that this guy is not a terribly large watch. I have smaller wrists than many, and in fact, it fits me rather nicely. Goes nicely on the wrist. So that's nice. Trying to think. Other size comparison here. This right here is a standard U.S. quarter, to give you a sense, and a U.S. penny. That's seen better days, but nonetheless. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this particular timepiece. So on the good side, first and foremost, I love the water resistance on this. That's a silly thing to like about a watch at some level, but for me it makes a lot of sense. This is 150 meter water resistant. It's a Seamaster. It's the Aqua Terra version, but you can see here it's still got the little Seamaster hippocampus underneath there, and the heritage of this watch is very much underwater, and with that kind of a water resistance rating, 150 meters means basically you don't need to think twice about water. Whether you're swimming, whether you're showering, doesn't really matter. This is going to be A-okay no matter what you're doing with your life. And so I appreciate very much that willingness to jump into the drink if it needs to be. It's very seldom that you find a nice dressy watch that's also very durable and has no concerns there. Next thing I'll say is, speaking of that dressiness, this is a watch that kind of bridges a gap between dressy and sporty. If you just throw this guy on the wrist, on the bracelet particularly, it can look relatively sporty and, I guess, jaunty. It's not completely dressy. It's not, oh my god, you could wear this, I don't know, golfing. If you golf, you could do all kinds of things wearing this watch, and no one would really think twice. Maybe it's a little dressier than some, but at the same time, though, if you put this little guy on a leather strap, like this little leather deployant buckle, it gets really dressy looking really quickly. It's a beautiful, beautiful watch if you're looking for something that dresses up, and so this could be your one watch on a business trip. You throw it on the bracelet some days if you're trying to look all sporty, and you throw it, on the strap on another day if you got to bust out the tux, and I think you're going to be okay. You wear watches with tuxes? I don't know. I'm not a fashion guy. So actually, don't take any of my advice. But the one thing that doesn't work very well on this watch, in my experience, is a NATO strap. It's a little too informal to go with this, but that's okay. It doesn't have to. Speaking of this bracelet, I like the bracelet very much, both at the surface level. I mean, the bracelet itself is nice. It's got a lot of flex to it. It feels very comfortable on the wrist. It doesn't pull hairs. It doesn't cause problems. And the clasp is also very nice as well. You can see you've got this extending bar clasp, which basically means that it locks down to a very solid sort of thing, but when you take it off, this little bar pulls out, and that gives you a little bit more room to slide your hand in there. For somebody like myself who's got relatively small wrists with relatively large hands, well, okay, my hands are way bigger than my wrists. This little extending system is great because it makes it easy for me to get the watch over my hand while still having it snug on the wrist. Wearing the bracelet is a beautiful thing, and I also say that the clasp is nice. It's very subtle. It's right behind this little Omega thing. And if you press this little button here, that's what pops it loose. Note that the button is only on one side. So if you're coming from the other direction, nothing happens, which is great. It means that if you just stick your hand in your pocket or something and hit the fabric, it's not going to accidentally undo your watch. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the loom, and I'm going to try and show this off by charging the loom off camera here. Here we go. Beautiful. Right here you can see the loom just beautifully. You can see that every hour index is marked. In addition to the minutes, which are the little arrow here, this little bar, and then the seconds are loomed as well, which basically means that, you're going to be able to read this very nicely in the dark. And in fact, the loom is quite good. This loom lasts all night long with absolutely zero concern. This is a watch you can wear to bed and then read at 6 o'clock in the morning with no concern, and that's very, very nice. It lasts through the dark, long Michigan nights, and that's great. Next thing I'll say, the movement on this guy, in case you haven't noticed yet, is quartz, which is, in my opinion, a wonderful thing. I'm a big fan of quartz watches for everyday carry, but this is a very good quartz movement in some ways. We'll talk about some of the weaknesses later, but it's got some nice advantages. For instance, if you pull the crown out and go to the first position, you'll see that the hours jump without affecting the second hand. So let's say I get on a bus and or a bus or a plane for that matter, and I, go 2 time zones ahead. I just tweak this twice and I'm still where I was. No accuracy is lost. I'm still accurate to the second, but no problem. This also serves as your quick change date for if you have a month that's got fewer than, you just cycle this around one more time, and next thing you know, you're on the next date. And that's kind of a beautiful thing in and of itself. So that's really nice. You also get hacking seconds, so if you want to stop the second hand, all you do is just pull it to the third position, and the second hand stops entirely. And it's got a low power indicator, which means that if you're about to run out of juice, I think it gives you like 3 or 4 days worth of warning, you'll start seeing the second hand jumping 4 seconds at a time. Nice. And that's good because you don't want to be left high and dry with a dead battery with quartz. At least you'll know ahead of time. So there you go. You also have some serious advantages from quartz here. For instance, you've got a 2 to 4 year power reserve, which is just kind of a nice thing, as well as the great quartz accuracy. The accuracy on this guy is running, I believe, 0.01 seconds per day, which is just obscenely accurate. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so as a result, if this is your dressy watch that you wear once a month or even once every couple of weeks, this will always be ready and ticking along. It just sits there on the shelf. It's perfectly accurate. You don't have to worry about it. And then you take it off the shelf and you're good to go. Nice, nice thing. You've also got nice durability, which means it's, fine to wear out and about and jumping around, no problem. The service costs are very, very low. Even if you get the thing pressure tested, you're looking at $60 or $70 for a battery and pressure test, or like $10 for a battery elsewhere. And you've got very good anti-magnetic properties because it's quartz. So that's what's really good about this movement to me. And just this watch in general. The quartz has serious benefits in power reserve and elsewhere. The quartz movement itself has some very nice features. The lume is great. It's walking that gap between dressy and sporty rather nicely. The bracelet's very nice with a nice clasp, and it's water resistant while still looking damn good. Let's talk about what's great about this watch. To me, what's great about this watch are the fit and finish. It's the little tiny details. And it's a little hard to see because this is a very reflective watch, and unfortunately, I don't have a, cloud up above me or anything. But one thing that you can see, let's kind of highlight this here. Every one of the hands is faceted. It's kind of a black polish to it. So as I kind of move, you'll watch the minute hand there get partially engulfed by the shadow of my phone here. The hands are very, very highly polished, as are all of the indices for the hours, and they're applied. They're actual metal pieces that are stuck onto the dial. Hopefully you can see that here. That's kind of a beautiful thing, and compared to some of Omega's modern quartz and frankly non-quartz watches, this is a level of these applied indices are a beautiful thing. There were some other nice details as well. Let's see if I can zoom in on them a little bit here. The Omega, there you go, the little Omega symbol, or the Omega as the British would say, is actually an applied thing. It's a separate little piece of metal that's laid onto the surface there, which is very nice, and it's got a nice high polish to it as well. All of the hands have that beautiful polish, and the polish on the hands is more than just functional. If we're in a low light situation and you've got maybe, say, a light back in that direction, if you tilt the watch, you can usually get the watch hands to reflect off of that light and still be able to read the watch even if the lume isn't fully charged. So that's nice. I'll also say that the case itself is done nicely. If we take a look here, we can see there's a nice contrast between your brushed finish on the side here with a nice polish over here. And the end link fits very nicely up against the bracelet. The crown is nice with the little Omega on there. And, overall, I really like the finishing on this movement. It's a nice, I'm sorry, not on the movement, on the watch. I haven't seen the movement. Polish around the outside. It is a beautifully made object. This is great jewelry in addition to being a good timepiece. And that's hard to find, unfortunately, in the world of quartz. Very often quartz is made cheaply and, uninterestingly, but this is nicely finished. So that, to me, is what's truly great about this, is that it does have very, very nice fit and finish, befitting an Omega watch. Let's talk about what's bad here. So on the bad side, first off, unfortunately, I've just been talking up the polish on the hands, but polish on hands can be a double-edged sword, because without something in the middle there, and I hate to even make this comparison, this is a $5 quartz watch off of Amazon, but you can see here that no matter the angle I'm at, you can still see the large painted area on this hand, and similarly, if you've got large tracts of lume, like on the Seamaster Professional, you'll be able to view the hands even when the thing being reflected is very dark, whereas as we can see here, when I'm at a kind of reflecting something black, the only thing that's visible here is the lume, so that little stripe there and the arrow here. This just means that at many angles in darker conditions, the watch isn't as readable, but, whatever, not a big deal. Next thing, the extending bar system. I was just talking this up, and it is indeed a beautiful thing, but unfortunately you can see there's just a little tiny pin in there, and that means that if this guy gets unlatched for whatever reason, this could very much be a weak link. This could pull out and break in a way that maybe a much stronger bracelet might not have an issue with. That said, it's a dressy little watch. I don't see this being, what you're using in your offshore lobstering sort of arrangement. Next thing that's a little bit unpleasant is the fact that if you look closely here, you can see that the links are pin-based, so they're pin and tube, rather than screw-down links. That's really tough to swallow at your higher end. If you're over $1,000, I don't love seeing pinned links. Omega's doing better about that in their newer lineup, but I don't know. Here it's a little bit annoying. Then on the bad side, finally, the movement itself, the quartz movement leaves a lot to be desired at this price. High-end quartz has a lot of opportunity for technology. But this is just kind of an off-the-shelf ETA quartz movement that's been modified a little bit by Omega. So for instance, it's not a high-accuracy thermocompensated quartz. I mean, it's plenty accurate, don't get me wrong. 0.1 seconds a day is pretty damn great. But it's not officially high accuracy. It's not going to run at like 10 seconds a year or something like that. Next thing, there's no perpetual calendar. The date change adjusting is easy enough and very nice, but that is something you have to keep in mind. There's also no solar or kinetic charging off this guy. You have to replace the battery every 3 or 4 years, which means that this has got a shelf life to it. If you don't wear this for a couple of years, there's a chance you'll come back to a dead watch, and you'll be taking a trip to the jeweler, which isn't incredible. There's also no radio synchronization. A lot of higher-end quartz watches these days have not only the solar, but they also will talk to the atomic clock every evening to get a sense of what's going on, whereas this guy, unfortunately, doesn't. You put in the time manually, and it just does its best. It would be nice to see some radio sync at this kind of a price point. The battery on this guy is 2 to 4 years, which is fine. It's pretty vanilla, but I'd kind of like to see a little bit more. If you're going to make a replaceable battery, do a 7-year battery or something like that. That would impress me a little bit more. And honestly, Citizen and Seiko and even Casio are making much better quartz movements these days than ETA. ETA's quartz division mostly exists to put something in cheap watches. And so to see this in a, 1,000, 1,500, and, even higher, Omega seems a little bit off. I kind of wish they'd source their parts from the other side of the world there. So that's kind of the last of the bad things here, is that as a quartz movement goes, this isn't all that advanced. It's missing a lot of those higher-end quartz features. It's fine, but that's a little frustrating. So that's the bad. It's missing the quartz features. It's using pinned links rather than anything screwed down. The extending bar system could be a weak point if the bracelet comes unclasped, and the polished hands can actually be a little tougher to read at night because there's no patches of lume or anything. Well, at least there aren't big ones to help you catch the ambient light that's out there. Let's talk about what's ugly here. What's ugly to me is that you're paying something like $1,200 on the used market for one of these guys for a relatively feature-poor quartz watch. That really does sting a little bit. If you're looking at this from any kind of a horology standpoint, you're basically buying a relatively inexpensive quartz watch in a very fancy case. And I don't know, I struggle with that so damn much because I love this watch's jewelry, but at the same time, I know that the movement in here is like worth $10 or something like that, and that's. I really wish that they tried harder here, that they went solar, that they went high accuracy, that they did something to show that they were really trying to play with the edges of quartz a little bit more. It's not a huge deal because it's fine functionally, and a cheap quartz is better than an expensive mechanical in a lot of ways. Oh God, don't kill me, mechanical guys. I got a video about that. But still, it still stings to pay that much money and get a very basic quartz movement in it. The other ugly thing that is completely unrelated to this watch but is deeply ugly is that you cannot buy a new high-quality quartz Aqua Terra. If you go down to your local Omega boutique right now and look at your modern quartz Aqua Terras, they are terrible. You get plasticky dials, you get painted on indices, you don't even get a reflective Omega symbol. The loom is just not stellar. They've just removed a bunch of the features and the finishing, yet they're charging the same price. They are very, very hard trying to push you into the spinny gear mechanical models by making the quartz watches just terrible, and that's really, really sad. The spinny gear models nowadays are just absolutely gorgeous and excellent, but the quartz is just being kneecapped artificially because the Swiss want to sell you spinny gears, and God, do I hate that. I would love to walk into an Omega dealership and buy a brand new, excellent quartz watch, but unfortunately, that's just not where they're making their profits, and so they're trying to screw over the quartz guys, and that's really deeply ugly. So for me, that's what's ugly here, is that the movement in here is pretty inexpensive, and the new Omega quartz is just brutally bad. That's life, though. Let's go final conclusions here. My final conclusion on this watch is I am honestly a little bit torn because, look, at some level, this watch angers me. Because this is a $1,200 watch, like I said, that's got a movement in there that probably cost them $20 or $30 to put in. And that feels deeply lazy. I wish that they had tried a lot harder and really went with a more interesting and sort of orologically compelling quartz movement inside this. I know some people don't believe that's a thing, but I sure do, and I'd like to have seen it. That said, at the exact same time, this is a really nice watch. It's a great functional timepiece, and there is a lot of good here. I mean, it's incredibly accurate, it's easy to read, it's got great loom, it's got very nice quick adjust features. This is really a spectacular watch, even with that cheapy little quartz movement in it. And so I like it very much. And then when you throw in the jewelry factor, and this is really high-end jewelry, I feel like, it is a very compelling watch. And so for me, ultimately, I think this is a gem. I really do like this watch a lot. Unfortunately for me, it's also just too dressy. I am not a particularly dress-up sort of guy. Generally, I wear, well, boring sorts of clothing. If I'm wearing a tie, I have done something wrong. And so for me, every time I wear this watch, it looks a little bit out of place. And I don't go to dressy events enough to justify owning a dressy watch. So this guy is going to go down the road to somebody else, and I'm going to stick with its little brother. Well, no, actually, it's probably its bigger brother. The Omega Seamaster 300 in quartz. I think same movement, but just looks a little bit more my style. But that said, I still like this watch a lot, and frankly, if I could afford to keep a $1,200 quartz watch around, I would do it. And it's a very, very nice little thing. So if you're looking at one of these guys, well, if you're looking for Omega quartz, this is probably the generation to look for. This is the last time they were really doing them right. Before they decided screw quartz. And if you're looking at one of these specifically, I do highly recommend that you do it. But, you know, not everyone's going to love the quartz. Not everyone's going to love the dressiness. And, well, not everyone's going to be able to stomach paying that much for a relatively basic movement. But if you do, I think you're going to love it because there is a whole lot to love right here in this little guy. So there you go. Omega Aqua Terra Quartz. It is a gem. It is jewelry. It's a weird watch. Absolutely 100%. But I love it. So there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, that you had a good time, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.